Hi, I'm Stephanie Rozzo. Welcome to Nature Sketch Create Short-crested Coquette Go Out and Sketch instructional video. In this video, I'll be showing you how to sketch the short-crested coquette by applying what you learned in your step-by-step lesson. First, make sure you have all the materials you need before you go out to sketch. You can head out to a zoo or a garden or sketch a hummingbird from an HD video at home. Today I'm sketching a composite video of a similar hummingbird, the tuft coquette, for demonstrative purposes. Remember, this is just a sketch. Take your time to relax and observe, and try not to get too caught up with accuracy. Let's get started. So the first thing you'll want to do is study the animal a little bit. Just kind of look at it and think about where you want to have it on your page. So you can start with some simple shapes, really light, rough lines, maybe some circles, ovals, to make sure it'll fit on the page before drawing in any details. And you can even draw like a line for the whole bird if you want to, if that helps. They're just kind of like guidelines helping you figure out where things are. So whatever you can do to help yourself. Let's draw some simple shapes in. And then start to define those shapes a little bit, adding a few details. And if you're doing this from a live bird, you'll want to go pretty fast. And if the bird flies away, you can use your reference image in order to finish that sketch if you want to, or you can just write in that you didn't have the bird there very long in the white spaces. And using a composite video of this bird while it's moving a little bit to help demonstrate how to actually sketch this. So it's important to figure out where the bill is before drawing in the eye, or vice versa. So I have my bill, and then see that it just kind of runs right above the bill. And I'm starting to make some darker marks. I'm not worrying about these other marks I've made unless they confuse me. Because if you were sketching this from a live bird, it would be hard to have the time. You wouldn't really have a lot of time for that. So now my bill is a little low to the eye, so I'll just move it up a little bit. And this might take a little bit of going back and forth a little. And you can see, I see another shape right here, so I'll go ahead and draw that in to help me define where exactly this eye is going to sit. Looks pretty close. Feels fairly accurate. It's important to take some time to make sure that that's right. Or it might not look like a bird. It just might look kind of really off. And I can decide whether I want to draw the crest up or down or in between. I think I'm gonna do it down. This bird has very similar characteristics to the short-crested coquette. The crest is longer and also has these large tufts. And it's good to find any kind of defining marks. See, there's a little defining mark there. And then the shape of the head. And I found this shape here underneath the eye. That's helpful. I'm not going to color in the eye yet because maybe I'll want to move it once I draw in some of these other details. Maybe I'll change my mind again. Maybe it'll still look kind of strange. And I'll need to change it. And I'm just going to quickly add the throat details here. And this bird has these tufts on the side that are very long. I'm not going to get really accurate with that. I'm just going to quickly put some in just to demonstrate how you want to do this if you're out about sketching. If you have more time to develop this image, that's great too. And I'm actually probably taking a little bit too much time. I'm trying not to be too exact. I'm not going to develop all of these feathers quite yet. They are a landmark for me as to where other things go, so I am taking some time to put them in right now before I develop the rest of the body. I liked the basic body size. You have to have that first before you start adding these details. And so I'm just going through and adding details from the top to the bottom. I'm not going to add in all of the feathers here. I'm just going to kind of draw them in as a group. The large overall shapes. So this is kind of rectangles, and then this one is a bit more of a triangle. It has several feathers grouped in. And then there's some coverts here as well. And then the rest of the wing feathers, which you can't really see too well in the video, but it does go down, kind of cut off, I believe right about there. It's hard to tell, maybe a little lower. And I can change that still, of course. Going to draw in this branch real roughly. Can tell where that tail band is now based on where my feather groups are. And then the tail feathers, which just go just beyond, not too far. The tail goes just a little bit past the wing there. And then you can't really see much of what's going on under here in the video. So paint that in really dark, and that will mimic that. And then we have the other weave, which, as you can see, it does line up pretty well with the forewing here on the front. I'm using these lines to help me figure out where the feet are. I'm going to draw in a little bit of dark area here to give myself some sense of where things are at, just to help guide me. I'm going to draw in some feet really quickly using a few lines. There's a couple toes there. Again, it's pretty dark, so it's hard to see, and I can just paint that in dark to mimic that since I can't see it, or I can use other things as reference, such as my reference image, if it helps. So just really quickly adding in a few lines there. And now I'm going to add these, and I'm going to look at it and I'm just make sure that it's the right, basically the right size. I believe it's a little off, so I might change some things a little bit. I think that this throat patch comes down a little bit more, so I'll change that, and so I don't get confused, I'm going to erase those lines. It looks a little bit more accurate, and it looks like the black comes out a little bit more on the chin as well. And it's not going to be exact, it's just a sketch, it's going to be just real rough. It's kind of a weird angle this bird is sitting at. But I think I have all the basic groups mapped out. There's a little bit more space here as well. It's okay to look at it a few times, kind of like when you're transferring your image, to make sure there isn't anything you missed. But not to take too much time doing it, just a little bit. So you don't want it to end up looking really weird once you add the paint onto it. It's a little smaller, a little flatter. Now I'm just fine-tuning this a little bit. It's just a sketch, so if you don't have anything quite exactly right, that's okay. This is just for practice, just to study this bird. If you're doing a long, detailed image painting of it, recreating a long, detailed painting, you can spend more time making sure everything is exactly where it's supposed to be. I think I like overall the way it looks. Of course, some things I'm not 100% happy with, but I feel like I would need to move on if I was outfield sketching this. Definitely need to be moving on. So since I'm not outfield sketching, I'm going to go ahead and write that this is a coquette. And I think I'm going to write tuft up here. And the scientific name really small on this. Just because I like the way it looks on the composition. And if you are going to be doing this, you can write whatever you like in any of the white space, make observations and different things you want to say about the bird. So I've revived my paints with a little bit of water just for speed, and that way I don't have to remix them or reshake up the bottles or worry about how much paint I have in my palette. Everything is ready to go, and this bird is very similar in color to the Short-crested Coquette, and so I shouldn't really need any other colors, but just in case I do, I have my paints on the side here just in case I need it. So it's good to have on hand. And I'll go ahead and start the same way I did with the step-by-step by adding a little bit of the emerald color. And I'm going to add that to the bird. You can see from the video that it's in this part of its head. And right behind the eye here. And then there's quite a bit dark area here in the flanks, and then into the belly and the breast. And it gets a little lighter, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to dab my brush off onto my towel and then just kind of move that paint. There's still some green, but it's a little bit more muted in color, so I'm going to pull that into that area so it's a little lighter. And then the last area, I see some of the green color. Well, there's actually two spots here in these coverts. And then also kind of in the upper wing area. I might just put a little bit in the wing there. And more down there. And then just along the lower part of the back, or the lower mantle area, right above the rump. Looks like there might be even just a little hint of green in the rump as well. I'm going to clean off my brush, and I'm not going to continue to put any paint in the green area, so I don't have to wait for it to dry. I'm going to take a little bit of the orange color, that one that has a lot of water added to it, making it wet and light, and add it to the crest here. And this bill on this bird looks very orange, so I'm going to add it there. And I can add it pretty liberally throughout the cheek tufts as well. And there's no need to be really exact with that. Let's get it in there. I left a few cheek tufts out, which if you forget something, it's totally fine. You can go back and add them. Since I didn't add all of them at the beginning, I forgot to add them, which is totally fine. I'm just going to add them really quick there, because they are really long and I want that to represent that bird. That's an instance in which you can go back and add them anytime, even if this bird flies away if you're doing it in person. There's also a little bit of this orange color right behind the eye here that I can see. Throughout the belly, now this is dry, so I can add a little bit in there. And the breast here. And it's kind of, use these line marks because it's kind of interspersed all over. And then there's a little bit in the tail. So I'm just going to go ahead and paint the tail because I'll put a darker color over that later. I'm just gonna go and paint this little dark area with a little bit of that just to give it more color. Next, I'm going to add this bronzy color, and go ahead and put that in to the throat area. Kind of give a base color underneath all that black. And then I will bring it into the back a little bit, a tiny bit there. The area behind the eye has a little. And then I'm waiting for this to dry. So that seems to have quite a bit. But then there's some right underneath the tail band here. And probably just go ahead and paint in this area. Maybe, let's see, maybe the wing. As well. And I didn't draw on the feathers yet, so I'm just kind of, you could have taken some time to draw on the feathers, but I didn't. So just kind of putting it down, keeping that in mind. Put a little bit in here on the breast and belly. And I'm not going to put it everywhere, but just most of the space. And then there's a little bit dabbled into the side and into the flanks. And this video, this area is very dark, so I'm going to go ahead and fill that in a little bit too. And add some of the sepia color. I'm going to add it to the feet and to the branch. Going to add that wet light color maybe to the eye here. Looks like there might be a little bit on the edge of the beak, on the tip of the beak. And then again, right here. And I feel like I want another feather here, so I'm putting that there, and I'll add some more orange into there, that spot. It's just a sketch, so you can feel free to change it a little bit whenever you want. And I'm gonna go ahead and add it in here. I'll try to add the half circle shapes, even though you can't see it very well in this video. To represent those feathers. And this is all dry, so I can go ahead and there's a kind of a darker area here, and then the much darker area here. Just kind of building that up. If it's a little too dark, just dab it on your towel. A little bit too dark. Just kind of interspersed through there, just a little line motion to show the texture of the feathers. And then picking it up and adding some more darker down underneath here. And I'm moving back and forth from the really dark to the really light just for speed. And then they're just kind of moving from the top to the bottom with this color. It's all really dark, so I'll probably add another layer of dark color in there too. then I'm going to just add some lines in the different parts of the wing, keeping some areas white to represent those wing feathers. And same with this space, kind of adding some lines with the sepia, and the same with this space. You could count the feathers. Since this is just a quick sketch, I'm not going to worry about that. If there's something you're wanting to specifically study, it would be a good thing to spend some time on. I'm just going to let it be approximate. And then adding some more here. So just kind of mapping this out a little bit. And then kind of dabble it to show the texture of the feathers. The same right up here. I'm moving back up to the top. And dabbling it in. Just wanted to show the same technique, getting that texture in real quick. I'm coming down to the bottom and adding some more lines to represent those feathers without counting them or getting them exactly right. Just quickly getting some color in to the area to represent that. I'll need some more dark sepia, so I'll probably add that in a minute. I might jump over to the darker orange color. I'm going to add maybe this deeper orange because this bird has some really dark, deep orange areas. I'm going to start in the darkest area, add that in. And then I'm going to clean my brush and just pull some of that paint up. That way I'm not worrying about getting a light color, making sure the water is the right. Just kind of putting it in there real quick. Not dark enough, just add a little bit more. And the feathers closer to the throat are a little bit darker. So I'm going to add that first. And then here in the edges. And then I'm going to take my brush and just kind of create a gradient with some of that orange, pulling it down. And if I need to, just add a little bit more to make sure those are really dark next to the throat. And there's a real dark area on the tail here. It's pretty deep orange. So make sure to represent that a little bit more in the wing. I think I'm going to add some darker green now as well. I'm going to kind of put that in, dabbing it. In those darker areas, just kind of giving a representation of the feather. Textures there, and some darker in the back. Let me take a little bit of this cinnamon color from my other and add it just a tiny bit for some really dark spots. For my step-by-step, use this cinnamon color. Just a few areas here, not a lot in the video. It would be really interesting to do a comparison of this bird in person rather than on a video or image. And now I think I'm going to take a little more sepia shake it up and add it in so I can get a real dark color. I need to get some more. Mine is a little too watered down. And I'm going to just start adding that in. If you have black on hand, you can add that instead. It looks a little more black from the video. Or you can also add it in with your micron pens. I think sepia works well enough. And I'm going to dab it in to kind of represent the texture of the feathers, leaving a little bit of space. In between, give it a little bit more transparency for that reflection. Paying attention to where those feathers are laying down. And then probably add in this because I didn't draw it in, just in case I need it. Then let's see, I would add a little bit of on the feet, just really quickly, not really paying too close attention to exactly what the shape is, unless that's something that you're really concerned about. It's hard to see in this video due to the lighting. And then I'm going to take this paint and give it a nice big shadow. So I'm trying to avoid those toes a little bit so you can see them, but the shadow is so dark, you may not be able to. And it's a pretty hard shadow, so I'm not going to add a gradient to that. And then trying to avoid the feet, adding a shadow underneath on the breast of this bird. As well. And into here as well. I'm just kind of leaving a space in between the feet and to give some sense of what it is. Even though in the video it just kind of all blends together a bit. I don't have enough water in that. It's not really moving very well on my paper, so I'm going to add a little more water. Pick it up. That's not dark enough. Mix that in. Should be better. Yep, there now it moves better. If I have a problem with that, that would be why. Just need a little more water. And overall the wings are pretty dark. I'm going to start up here. Just kind of roughly represent these wing feathers and using the same lines I made before. And then making them a little bit thicker. And I'm not counting how many feathers or trying to get an exact representation, just kind of getting it in there. Leaving some spaces blank to show that there are different feathers grouped in there. I'm just trying to create create some thin lines representing the other feathers grouped in here, kind of representing the shape more than the amount. It's hard to differentiate the tail from a wing, so that's okay. Getting the basic idea of this bird onto the page. Not an exact placement at all. Dabbing it. Now I need something kind of in between that really dark and the really light color, just to kind of finalize this a bit. So I'm going to add that in. This line motion to kind of represent the feathers and the texture. Not an exact placement, not an exact representation, just a sketch, just quickly getting it in, getting an idea of this bird, the basics, the color, and the placement of that color, just a quick study of this animal. And I think that that works for me for the paint. So I'm going to go ahead and let this dry and move on to adding some ink. So I like doing the eye first. I'm starting with the 005 black micron as a very thin tip. And I'm going to go throughout and add, kind of redraw all these lines, just like we do with the step-by-step, to give myself a good idea of where everything actually belongs, and redefine anything wherever the paint landed. And this gives me a chance with this tiny tip that if there's anything I want to change afterwards in a later step, I can. Just like what we with the paint, where we started with the light to the dark, I'm going to do the same kind of thing with the ink, starting with the thin tip, getting to the thicker tip. And so I'm just going to go throughout and redraw this. So I think I've redrawn all of the 005 lines, and I realize I want to add a little bit more of the orange, that I did miss some more of those cheek tufts when I was redrawing it, since I still have the bird to look at. And so I'm going to add a little bit more orange in there, coming out into those cheek tufts too. And this is a great example of showing how you can add more paint if you need to at any point, once that ink dries. And now I'm going to go ahead and add some, I'm just going to jump right to the 08 black micron just for speed. So I used the black 08 micron to redefine this crest area, to define the shape of the feathers a little bit more, and I filled in this dark area. Not everything, I left a little bit transparent, and I used line marks to fill in this area, kind of going in the direction of the feathers. And I defined the feathers areas again as well, and I did not count the number of feathers, so I just went ahead with what I was doing. This is just a sketch, and it's hard to figure out how many feathers there are, and I want to go fast, not something I was focusing on, so I just define them a little bit more with the black 08 micron, define some more edges of the different spaces in the back, and I went ahead and added in the common name as well. And when you're done, make sure to add any kind of observations that you want to add on the outside, how you were feeling that day, what you thought of this bird, how drawing this made you feel, how painting it made you feel. Thank you for joining me today. Great job observing your world. If you like this video, please click the like button and subscribe to this channel. Make sure to check out naturesketchcrate.com for future lesson crates and to sign up for our newsletter for regular updates.